Back in the late 1980s, Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, was the world's second largest computer manufacturer, behind only the 500-pound gorilla of the industry, IBM. DEC made its mark on the field by their line of what they called mini computers. See, back in those days, if you wanted a computer, you had to clean out your basement and install this giant monolithic machine, hire a team of acolytes to run it for you. And so DEC was able to sort of get a hold in the marketplace by selling mini computers. Instead of being the size of your basement, they would be the size of a refrigerator. Like this sexy badass right here, the PDP-8. So the PDP-8 was really one of their most successful mini computers. And this was one of the first lines of computers where instead of having an expensive machine that powered your entire business, now, say, an individual academic department or an individual engineering department, even a theater group, could buy one of these things and use it to run the lights. I have this fantastic photograph of, it's a super grainy black and white photo, it would reproduce terribly, but it's an awesome picture, and what it shows is a farmer who's taken one of these things and loaded it onto the back of his tractor so that he can do computerized potato picking, which is, to some extent, insane. But also, to me, I think it means that the PDP-8 here is the world's first mobile computer. This is Ken Olson. He's their CEO. Look how happy he is. Doesn't he look happy? Yeah, he's really happy, right? And why shouldn't he be happy? I mean, he's the CEO of the world's second largest computer manufacturer. He has a track record of innovation. He has historically done his research, understands his customer base. He knows what it is that people want when they buy a computer, and he has historically innovated to bring them what they want. And he feels confident that there is no reason for anyone to have a computer in their home. I mean, why would you want that? It goes against everything that people understand about why people bought computers, how they used them, what they wanted to use them for. It didn't make sense. I'm pretty sure that you guys are sitting in meetings someplace where sitting around a conference room table and someone's saying, there's no reason anybody's going to need to do that on mobile. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? That's not how you use a mobile device. They can just use their desktop for that. Okay, I want you to imagine. It is 1988. DEC has moved on from their historically successful line of PDP computers to their even more successful line of VAX mini computers. This is the VAX 11, first computer with a 32-bit architecture. They are also selling their wildly popular line of VT125 integrated graphics terminals. This is the most popular graphics terminal on the marketplace. This thing, it can do custom fonts, it can do charts and graphs, rainbows shoot out of these things. Look how happy this guy is. Doesn't he look happy? He's really happy, right? Okay, you kind of can't see how happy he is because of the giant Magnum PI mustache, but I swear to God, this guy is super happy with his VT125. And so they're sitting on top of the world, right? And there's just no reason for them to believe that their entire market is going to be destroyed by one of these cheap pieces of crap. I mean, look at them. This is not the VT125 integrated graphics terminal. This is a black and white television set from Radio Shack. This is not the VAX 11 32-bit architecture. This is a cassette tape deck. It stores its memory on a cassette tape. It's only got the one dumb little rainbow. Rainbows don't even shoot out of these things. So it's 1988. DEC is the world's second largest computer manufacturer. They're the second largest employer in the state of Massachusetts, behind only the state government. 1990, just 2 years later, they post their first quarterly loss, and they start laying people off. 1991, they post their first full-year loss. They would lose money in 5 out of the next 7 years. And in 1998, just a decade later, they're gone. They're out of business. The entire company is sold to the manufacturer that makes personal computers. This has got to be some kind of crazy fluke, right? I mean, there's no way that Ken Olson could have ever anticipated this. I mean, this has got to be something that's just like unprecedented in the history of American business, right? Wrong. In industry after industry, the new technologies that brought the big, established companies to their knees, they weren't better. They weren't more advanced. They were actually worse. The new products were low-end, dumb, shoddy, and in almost every way inferior. Almost. Clayton Christensen had a theory, and he called it disruptive innovation. And what this theory says is that the pace of change toward technological progress is disrupted from the low end. New products come onto the marketplace, and even though they are not better, even though they do not succeed on any of the criteria on which you would define good, they're cheaply made, they don't work as well, costs more to be able to do the same thing. Even though these products don't compete on any of the criteria which you would use to define a quality product, they do one thing, and they do one thing really, really well, better than anything. They put the technology into the hands of people who never had it before. And this has happened time and time again. Think about radios. Like, imagine it's the 30s or 40s, and you've bought one of these gorgeous furniture radios that you're going to keep in your living room. It's got rich, resonant sound, gorgeous craftsmanship. You imagine gathering the family around there in the evenings to listen to radio programs. You're going to hand this down as an heirloom to one of your children. Except your teenager buys one of these cheap pieces of plastic so she can take it to the beach. Transistor radios weren't better. They sucked. The sound quality was tinny. You couldn't tune the thing. They were cheap and made of plastic. But what they did is they put a radio into the hands of a population of teenagers who otherwise couldn't afford a radio. And within just a decade or two, transistor radios got good enough. The more and more people bought them, and the quality went up. And sooner or later, nobody needed to buy a big furniture radio anymore. The name of the companies that made these beautiful pieces of furniture radios, they're lost. Who knows who they are? The name of the company that made the first transistor radio, they were called Sony. So the same thing is happening today with the personal computers. Clayton Christensen's most embarrassing prediction, funnily enough, was that the iPhone would fail. Steve Jobs showed it to him. And when Christensen looked at it, remember, he's a low-end guy. What Christensen saw was a really fancy cell phone. He saw a luxury device that was pegged to the top end of the market. What he didn't see was a really cheap computer. What he didn't see was really cheap internet access for people who otherwise would have no way to go online. The digital divide in this country is real. I think it's easy for people like us to forget that having internet access and a broadband connection and a desktop computer is a luxury that is just out of reach for not just people in the developing world, for people right here in the US. In this country today, 20% of Americans have no internet access at all. Now that number is interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting to me as the second number, which says that 35% of Americans, more than a third, don't have a broadband connection at home. Now, think about all of the things that you do in the privacy of your own home, and hidden behind your own computer that you might not want the prying eyes of your coworkers or your boss or strangers on the street watching you do. I don't know what you're thinking about, but I'm thinking about checking your bank statement. Maybe looking up a personal medical condition, looking for a new job, heck, even shopping for Christmas presents. These are all things that we take for granted we can do because we have a personal connection to the internet. For more than a third of Americans, they don't have that. The numbers are even more stark for populations of people who have been traditionally disadvantaged. It's 29% of Black Americans with no internet access, and more than half don't have broadband at home. Numbers are about the same for Hispanic Americans, about a third with no connectivity at all, and about half don't have a broadband connection. 38% of low-income Americans don't have the internet, and almost 60% don't have a connection at home. You have to think, if you're struggling to pay the rent, put gas in the car, put food on the table, having an internet connection would probably seem like a far-off luxury. Problem is, people are finding the tools for escaping poverty increasingly out of reach if you don't have an internet connection. 80% of Fortune 500 companies only advertise their job listings online. If you don't have a high school diploma, 57% don't have internet access, and a whopping 88% don't have a broadband connection at home. Think about it. It's like, you don't have a high school diploma, which means you don't have a job, which means that you don't have any money, which means that you don't have internet. And so that leaves crystal meth. You laugh now. If I took your home internet connection away, you would be stockpiling cold medicine in like 2 weeks. It'd be an episode of Breaking Bad in here. So not everybody has internet. You want to know what everybody does have? Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a phone. In the last 3 years, mobile phone ownership in this country has gone up only a couple percentage points. I guarantee that within the next few years, within our lifetime, that number is going to go up to about 95%, and it is not going to stop for the rest of our lives. Having a mobile phone is not a luxury in this country. It is a staple item, like owning a television set or having a landline back in the day. What has changed is the number of people who say that they have ever gone online using their mobile device. Now, that number has skyrocketed to 55% in just the last 3 years. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why that happened, right? It's smartphones. And I want to make it clear. When we talk today about the difference between the mobile phone market and the smartphone market, those aren't two separate markets. It'd be like back in the day when we talked about the difference between black and white televisions and color televisions. Eventually, everybody just had a color television. Same thing's going to happen here. Eventually, everybody's going to have a smartphone. And that means that everybody is going to have the ability to go online. So that means that there's this rise of what I like to call the mobile-only user. This is a population of people who say that they only or mostly go online using their mobile device. Of that 55% of Americans who say that they've ever used their mobile phone to go online, right now, today, 31% of them said that they only or mostly go online using their mobile device. That's tens of millions of Americans. And the numbers are even higher for, predictably, the people who don't have a broadband connection at home. It's 39% of people with a high school education. It's 43% of low-income Americans. It's 42% of Hispanic Americans. And more than half, 51% of Black Americans say that they only or mostly go online using their mobile device. These numbers are also true for teenagers. It's 50% of people 12 to 17 and 45% of people 18 to 24. Mobile was the final frontier in the access revolution. Mobile has erased the digital divide. A mobile device is the internet for many people. Which is why it's great we're doing such a good job on mobile, guys, right? Right? Am I right? Now, sadly, you know what kind of experience we give to these people? We tell them that search is broken, that pages redirect to the home page on mobile, that all of the content isn't available on mobile, that hover states are broken, that people can't find what we're looking for. We treat these people like they're second-class citizens simply because they are browsing the internet through a smaller screen. And it's time that we said this isn't good enough. We're better than that as an industry. You know, these people deserve access to the same content, the same information. They deserve information that is every bit as browsable and navigable and readable and findable as people who are using the quote-unquote real internet. So what are we going to do? Well, the last thing I want is for people to rush out of here thinking, oh, well, Karen said we better go throw up a mobile website immediately. You know, let's just put up a paltry subset of our content, you know, on a separate mobile website, and then we can all pat ourselves on the back saying we did a good job. That's, in fact, the exact opposite of what I want you to do. Instead, I want you to take a step back and say, before we rush in to trying to figure out what we want to do, we need a content strategy for mobile. And this is super random. It's like totally weird how these things happen, but I just happen to have a book of the same title. It came out from a book apart last year. You can buy it online right now and read it on your phone. So I want to leave you with 3 things that you could do. Go back to your office right now. Start thinking about these things as part of your mobile strategy. So the first one is that you should know how content gets made. How does content get created in your organization? Too often, what I find when I go and talk to people, I say things like, hey, what if we were to get all of the people who are responsible at your company for posting things on the internet? You know, all the people who can contribute on the CMS, people who contribute on blogs or in social, let's get them all in a room and talk about the process. And people laugh and laugh and laugh at me, and they're like, Karen, we don't know everybody in our company who can make content for the web. And what's really scary about that is that now people are using mobile as an opportunity to create yet another silo, yet another team that's going to go off and create something different. We are incentivizing the mobile team to not work with the rest of the organization. We are telling them, hey, why don't you guys go off and do your own thing, rewrite the content, have a separate publishing workflow, get something up on mobile. Comcast has a page on their desktop website called Understanding Your Bill. Came time to put up a mobile website, they rewrote the page. Mobile users only get to understand their bill. They took several paragraphs of flabby text and they tightened it up on mobile. The mobile website, I'm going to go on record as saying, the mobile website is better. It's shorter, it's simpler, it's easier to read. They managed to convey all the same information in a nicer package. But if the mobile website is better, why isn't that just the website? They forked their website. And so now, every single time they want to make a change to this, they got to update it in 2 separate places. Here, desktop website last updated in March of 2012. Mobile website last updated July of 2011. It doesn't make sense. Nobody's got time to maintain a website where you have to make updates in 2 separate places. See, it's not a strategy if you can't maintain it. And so for everybody in these organizations that's saying, oh, well, mobile is somehow different. No, it's not. Baseline level of expectation is we should be delivering all of the same content to people on mobile. Get there first in one package that you can maintain, and then figure out how to tailor things for mobile. So the second thing that you could be doing to get ready for mobile right now, you could write better. You could have better written content. One of my big pet peeves in this industry is when I see all of these articles that purport to tell you, here's 4 tips for writing mobile website text. Here's how to write for mobile, top 10 tips. How to write content for mobile sites. Illustrated by a picture of a man using his laptop outdoors. I think this one pretty much sums up my point of view on this whole here's how you write for a mobile audience thing. See, there's no such thing as how to write for mobile. There's just good writing. All of the tips that you would see in those top 10 tips for how to write for mobile are the exact same things we told people about how to write for the web, and they're the exact same things we told people about how to write good professional communication. Write simple, clear, short sentences. Put the most important ideas up front. Break up the text with headings and bullet points. All of these things you could start doing right now. When the American Cancer Society was thinking about what their mobile strategy should be, they had many of the same questions that you might have. Should they come up with a separate mobile website that focused on just the most important information? Should they make mobile the fun-sized candy bar version of the website? Should they focus on the needs of the on-the-go cancer patient? When the American Cancer Society looked at their data, however, they discovered that the population of people who were more likely to be accessing their website on a mobile device was the exact same population of people who were less likely to get the appropriate preventive care and cancer screenings that they needed. And so the American Cancer Society realized that they had a life-saving imperative to get all of their content on mobile, all of it. And you want to know what? They did. I've dissected the American Cancer Society website, and it is a beauty to behold. Every single page, every single bit of content, they found a nice home for it on mobile. The mobile website is easy to browse, it's easy to navigate, it's easy to read. I might even go so far as to say I kind of like the mobile website better. You know why? Because reading about cancer is, in fact, a very serious topic. It is something where I like the focused experience of being able to really stare at that content. And they did it without taking one word away. Frankly, I think it would be disrespectful for the American Cancer Society to say, you get less information about cancer. You know why? Because you only have a little screen, so you don't deserve the full website. Other people who get the real website, they can find out all the information about cancer. No. All of your users, regardless of the device that they are using, deserve access to the same information. And the thing is, the American Cancer Society was able to do this pretty easily. They didn't have to go in and change up all of their content to make it mobile friendly. You know why? Because it was good content already. It wasn't that they had to design and write it for mobile. It was just good content, and it made the leap. See, good content transcends platform. If you have great content, if your content is well written and well structured, then you don't have to spend a lot of time hand-wringing about how to change it up for mobile. You just make it accessible and browsable and readable on a smaller screen. That's your mobile strategy. And so if you want to get there, the next thing we have to do is we've got to break away from having these blobs of content where formatting information, presentation markup is all mixed in with the content. And instead, we have to have clean, presentation-independent chunks of content that are flexible enough to go anywhere. It's like, if you want to embrace the semantic web, if you want to have a content model that will enable you to do true multi-channel publishing, then your content can't be all embedded in blobs where all of the formatting information is mixed up there on the page. And it's because there are all kinds of questions we're going to have to ask about our content. Like this page here from Amazon. When Amazon made the leap to mobile, they said, OK, let's take what is a fairly complex desktop page. How are we going to break it down to make that page navigable on mobile? And they had to ask themselves a bunch of questions like, OK, what do we keep? What do we get rid of? Do we keep all of this content? Should we get rid of some? How are we going to do that? If all of your content is stored in one big blob, you might not be able to target specific chunks of it. Should long pages be broken down into shorter ones? Well, maybe. This long desktop page from Amazon got broken into several shorter pages on mobile. How are you going to do that? You need some way to be able to get at that content and chunk it up. Is it going to work to reuse these headings as links? If I come to this product page on mobile, and I've got a question about the product, and I look at these three headings, product features from the manufacturer and product description, I don't know which one has the answer to my question in it. Those headings made perfect sense on a desktop page when I could see everything else in context. Now those headings are standing in as links, and frankly, I can't tell the difference between any of them. I don't know what's behind them. Same deal with the fact that they're reusing body copy for these teasers. I mean, you look at this page and you realize, you kind of squint at it and you're like, oh, every word on this page is just repeating the name of the product and a couple of data points about the zoom and the camera and the lens size over and over and over again. There is not one word of value provided in these navigation summaries. There's not one thing that tells me, oh, Karen, if you have this question about the product, tap on this section. It's going to have it for you. And finally, okay, let's say our desktop content isn't going to make the leap to mobile. What are we going to do now? How are we going to find fallbacks for flash videos or giant infographics or big tables? How are we going to make decisions about what to send to mobile and how to provide fallbacks when we can't? So I gave this talk recently, and somebody raised her hand, and she's like, oh, well, we're going to use responsive design to solve that problem. I'm like, responsive design is not going to solve your content problem. I mean, responsive design isn't going to answer any of these questions for you. And so there's no responsive magic wand that you get to wave that automatically figures out for you what all this content should be. You have to go in and figure out, okay, what's the right set of content that we can have chunked appropriately so we can make sure that each platform gets the right information. And the trick there is you're not thinking about creating content for a specific platform. You don't have a desktop web strategy and a mobile web strategy and a tablet web strategy and a Google Glass strategy. You have a content strategy. And the reason for that is that you don't get to decide what device somebody uses to access the internet. They get to decide that. It's our mission, it's our responsibility to make sure that they've got a great experience, that they get access to the same content, the same information, that it's browsable and navigable and readable, regardless of what screen size or platform or device they choose to use. And what this means is we take the history of technology as our cue. Disruptive technologies get good. For all of the arguments that people say about, oh, no one's ever going to want to do that on mobile, or mobile doesn't work for that. They can just use their desktop. A few years from now, no one's going to say that anymore. In fact, it's just going to be taken for granted that everyone will expect to use their mobile device for everything else that they can do on the web. And that's what's so exciting about this. Here's our chance, guys. Here's our chance to do mobile right. You know, to clean up badly outdated content, terrible content management systems, broken editorial processes. Mobile is our chance to actually fix some of these problems and do it right from the start. Thank you.
First question comes to mind. Are people willing to read long-form content on mobile?
Yep. All of the data that I have seen says that people are actually more engaged reading long-form content on mobile. I mean, you think about it, it's like it provides a really nice reading experience. There's not all that clutter and distraction. If the page, honestly, if you have great content, if it is engaging content, if somebody wants to read that content, I would never tell somebody that they've got to shorten that or clean that up. Now, if you have crappy content, yes, then by all means, use mobile as a filtering tool to help you cull some of the bad stuff. But don't be afraid of long-form content on mobile at all.
That's awesome, because one of the fears people have when they do the chunking that they're dumbing the content down, but people will consume it online.
No.
Yes?
So with the disclosure first that I actively develop a front-end framework, a lot of what you're saying involves and will incur significant dev and design time and expense. How would you go about selling to C-suite board level management that we need to kick out the current CMS, we need to redesign things, we need to invest in all this? How do you get the budget and the buy-in for that?
Yeah, the question is, how do you justify the ROI of when there's significant development cost in making these transitions?
Sure. So I actually do a full-day workshop on content strategy for mobile, and the first exercise is convince your CEO. And I think there's a lot of different levers that you would push in every organization. I think that many companies are waking up to the reality that their content management system does not support true multi-channel publishing, that they need to clean up some outdated processes and workflows. And I think that's one, I find that to actually be a very compelling argument. I also find that data is usually a really compelling story. I think everybody can see skyrocketing growth in mobile, and I think a lot of executives are persuaded by that. I also think that arguments about what competitors are doing are maybe one of the most persuasive things. I had one client tell me recently, they were like, here's our mobile strategy. We don't have a mobile website right now. These are our 3 biggest competitors. They don't have mobile websites either. we're going to wait around until one of our biggest competitors launches a mobile website, and then we're going to freak out.
Lisa.
Hey, thank you for your talk. So you had said with the American Cancer Society that they needed to include all their content in their mobile site, and with Amazon they needed to take content out. Would you say that Amazon basically, their problem was they let their, sorry, it's so echoey. Their problem was that they let their page layout dictate the content, and so you're saying write the content first?
So I guess that to rephrase the question, the problems with Amazon that you saw, was it more of a matter of page layout, or that they should really rewrite that content first? What would be your priority with Amazon?
Sure. So I don't think anybody ever needs to exclude content from their mobile site. In fact, my default position is if it's good content, it should be on mobile. Now, sometimes, maybe you've never heard this, but sometimes I find that people don't have very good content. And so mobile can be kind of a forcing function for them to say, okay, let's use this as a tool to help us go in and clean things up. With the Amazon example, I don't necessarily believe that Amazon needed to remove content from mobile, but they did need to structure it a little bit differently. And you're right, the desktop layout affords Amazon being able to throw everything in the kitchen sink on one page. That probably isn't going to work on mobile, or they need to have a structure to the content that allows them to break that into several smaller pages. And so that, when you start digging into the content management system, Amazon has really well-structured content already, so the way they do things is different. But for a lot of companies, it's like when you start digging into the CMS, it's like, oh, everything on that page is stored in one big blob. There's a giant blob in the content management tool that says content goes here. When you want to start breaking it down so that you might be able to reflow things differently on mobile, you can't do it. And so that I think is the challenge that we're going to face over the next few years.
And sorry, just one more question that we have time for. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I just want to ask, one of the parts of Avinash's presentation that I found particularly compelling was when he was showing the mobile version of a dog food site. And I thought it was really cool. It was like, oh, yeah, if you're on a mobile site, why not have a landing page or an entry point into your site that shows like dog parks, instead of just like which dog food you can buy. But taking your presentation into account, do you think is that unfairly pigeonholing your user, or is that like a cool thing that a mobile user might want?
So to restate the question, Avinash had this great example of a dog site that the mobile experience was very specific, like talking about dog parks. Are there instances where that is justified, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I find that when people talk about optimizing for mobile, what they usually mean is optimizing for local. And so it's specific things where it's like, we're trying to optimize for the use case where somebody is physically out in the world and they're looking for a dog park, they're looking for a hotel, they're looking for transit information. And in those cases, I'm like, great. Obviously that is a specific scenario, and I don't have an issue with people wanting to optimize for that, but that is a subset of how people use their mobile devices. And I tend to get a little bit twitchy when people talk about optimizing for mobile and they really mean local, and then we start equating local optimization with mobile, because mobile's so much bigger than that. People use their devices when they're not on the go. So for the specific example that you give, I think there's all kinds of things that we will be able to do, particularly over the next 5 to 10 years, that will take advantage of all of the things that mobile has to offer, all of the sensors and cameras and GPS and location information. However, my whole shtick, I think, is to put a stake in the ground and say, as a baseline, the first order of business for all of us is to achieve content parity, is to achieve a space where we're delivering essentially the same content to mobile devices or to every platform that's out there. And I would much rather tell people, hey, get that done first. Like, get content parity, and then let's start thinking about about tailoring things and optimizing them for mobile or other local context or personalized context. But it's hard to know how we're going to get there and do it right unless we have all of the content available so that we have real analytics and real data on which to make those decisions.
Karen, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.